Part 4 of the story of Mary MacLane. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Kristen Hughes. The Story of Mary MacLane by Mary MacLane. Part 4. January 24th. I am charmingly original. I am delightfully refreshing. I am startlingly bohemian. I am quaintly interesting. The while in my sleeve I may be smiling and a villain. I can talk to a roomful of dull people and compel their interest, admiration, and astonishment. I do this sometimes for my own amusement. As I have said, I am a rather plain-featured, insignificant-looking genius, but I have a graceful personality. I have a pretty figure. I am well set up. And when I choose to talk in my charmingly original fashion, embellishing my conversation with many quaint lies, I have a certain very noticeable way with me, an air. It is well, if one has nothing else, to acquire an air. And an air, taken in conjunction with my charming originality, my delightfully refreshing candor, is something powerful and striking in its way. I do not, however, exert myself often in this way, partly because I can sometimes foresee, from the character of the assembled company, that my performance will not have the desired effect. For I am a genius, and genius at close range at times carries itself unconsciously to the point where it becomes so interesting that it is atrocious and cannot be carried farther without having somewhat mildly disastrous results. And then again, the facial antics of some 10 or a dozen persons possessed more or less of the qualities of the genius fool, even they become tiresome after a while. Always I talk about myself on an occasion of this kind. Indeed, my conversation is on all occasions devoted directly or indirectly to myself. When I talk on the subject of ethics, I talk of it as it is related to Mary MacLane. When I give out broad-minded opinions about Ninon de l'Enclos, I demonstrate her relative position to Mary MacLane. When I discourse liberally on the subject of the married relation, I talk of it only as it will affect Mary MacLane. An interesting creature, Mary MacLane. As a matter of fact, it is so with everyone, only everyone is far from realizing and acknowledging it. And I have not lacked listeners, though these people do not appreciate me. They do not realize that I am a genius. I am of womankind and of 19 years. I am able to stand off and gaze critically and dispassionately at myself and my relation to my environment, to the world, to everything the world contains. I am able to judge whether I am good and whether I am bad. I am able, indeed, to tell what I am and where I stand. I can see far, far inward. I am a genius. Charlotte Brontë did this in some degree, and she was a genius. And also Marie Bashkirtseff and Olive Schreiner and George Eliot. They are all geniuses. And so then I am a genius in my own right. I am fundamentally, organically egotistic. My vanity and self-conceit have attained truly remarkable development as I've walked and walked in the loneliness of the sand and barrenness. Not the least remarkable part of it is that I know my egotism and vanity thoroughly, and plume myself thereon. These are the earmarks of a genius and a fool. There is a finely drawn line between a genius and a fool. Often this line is overstepped, and your fool becomes a genius, or your genius becomes a fool. It is but a tiny step. There's but a tiny step between the great and the little, the tender and the contemptuous, the sublime and the ridiculous, the aggressive and the humble, the paradise and the perdition. And so it is between the genius and the fool. I am a genius. I am not prepared to say how many times I may overstep the finely drawn line, or how many times I have already overstepped it. 'Tis a matter of small moment. I have entered into certain things marvelously deep. I know things. I know that I know them, and I know that I know that I know them, which is a fine psychological point. It is magnificent of me to have gotten so far at the age of 19 with no training other than that of the sand and barrenness. Magnificent. Do you hear? Very often I take this fact in my hand and squeeze it hard like an orange, to get the sweet, sweet juice from it. I squeeze a great deal of juice from it every day, and every day the juice is renewed, like the vitals of Prometheus. And so I squeeze and drink the juice, and try to be satisfied. Yes, you may gaze long and curiously at the portrait in the front of this book. It is of one who is a genius of egotism and analysis, a genius who is awaiting the devil's coming, a genius with a wondrous liver within. I shall tell you more about this liver, I think, before I have done. January 25th. I can remember a time, oh, very long ago. That is the time when I was a child. It is 10 or a dozen years ago. Or is it 1,000 years ago? It is when you have but just parted from your friend that he seems farthest from you. When I have lived several more years, the time when I was a child will not seem so far behind me. Just now it's frightfully far away. It is so far away that I can see it plainly outlined on the horizon. It is there always for me to look at, and when I look I can feel the tears deep within me, a salt ocean of tears that roll and surge and swell bitterly in a dull, mad anguish, and never come to the surface. I do not know which is the more weird and damnably pathetic, I when I was a child, or I when I am grown to a woman, young and all alone. I weigh the question coldly and logically, but my logic trembles with rage and grief and unhappiness. When I was a child I lived in Canada and in Minnesota. I was a little wild savage. In Minnesota there were swamps where I used to wet my feet in the spring, and there were fields of tall grass where I would lie flat on my stomach in company with lizards and little garter snakes, and there were poplar leaves that turned their pale green backs upward on a hot afternoon, and soon there would be terrific thunder and lightning and rain. And there were robins that sang at dawn. These things stay with one always. And there were children with whom I used to play and fight. I was tanned and sunburned, and I had an unkempt appearance. My face was very dirty. The original pattern of my frock was invariably lost in layers and vistas of the native soil. My hair was braided, or else it flew about a tangled maze, according as I could be caught by someone and rubbed and straightened before I ran away for the day. My hands were little and strong and brown, and wrought much mischief. I came and went at my own pleasure. I ate what I pleased. I went to bed all in my own good time. I tramped wherever my stubborn little feet chose. I was impudent. I was contrary. I had an extremely bad temper. I was hard-hearted. I was full of infantile malice. Truly, I was a vicious little beast. I was a little piece of untrained nature. And I am unable to judge which is the more savagely forlorn, the starved-hearted child, or the woman, young and all alone. The little wild, stubborn child felt things and wanted things. She did not know that she felt things and wanted things. Now I feel and I want things, and I know it with burning vividness. The little vicious Mary MacLane suffered, but she did not know that she suffered. Yet that did not make the suffering less. And she reached out with a little sunburned hand to touch and take something. But the sunburned little hand remained empty. There was nothing for it. No one had anything to put into it. The little wild creature wanted to be loved. She wanted something to put in her hungry little heart. But no one had anything to put into a hungry little heart. No one said dear. The little vicious child was the only MacLane.